The Grand Canyon is a natural wonder of immeasurable beauty and depth. What scientists have just discovered at the Grand Canyon terrifies the whole world. In its vast gorges and hidden caves, this ancient landscape holds stories that go far beyond what we can comprehend with our minds. Each layer of the steep walls tells a part of the chronicle of our Earth. People have lived in the rugged gorges and hidden crevices for thousands of years, leaving behind a fantastic legacy. The Grand Canyon is not just a majestic landscape, but a living museum of the Earth's history. Millions of years ago, when the dinosaurs still ruled the Earth and the continents were in even greater motion, the history of the Grand Canyon began. In that distant past, the area that is now one of the most magnificent natural wonders on Earth was nothing more than a vast plain and a rather quiet and inconspicuous piece of land. But the tranquility was only apparent. Deep down, things were bubbling. The tectonic plates on which the continent rests were in powerful motion. They shifted at great speed and pushed the land upwards at their interface. This created the Colorado Plateau, which slowly but steadily rose above the remaining ground level, paving the way for the natural spectacle to come. Somewhat later, around 6 million years ago, a river began its journey through the landscape. At first, the Colorado River was just a narrow watercourse, a trickle or a stream. But as the climate changed, with heavy rainfall and more meltwater from the Rocky Mountains, the river's power grew. Slowly but surely, the water cut deeper and deeper into the rock, removing layer after layer and exposing evidence of the Earth's evolution on the walls of the gorge that goes back billions of years. Each layer of erosion that the river has uncovered tells a story from a different time, of seas that once covered the land, of deserts that dried it out, and of rivers that shaped it. The steep walls display a palette of colors and formations ranging from soft reds to rich purples and browns. Each layer of color represents an era in the Earth's history, from the oldest layer at the bottom of the canyon, the Vishnu Shale, which formed about 1.7 billion years ago, to the youngest layers on the surface. Over millions of years, the Colorado River formed a canyon of unimaginable size and beauty. Today, the walls of the canyon reach a depth of up to 1,600 meters. The canyon is more than just a geological site, it is a symbol of time and the history of our planet. The place tells us about the power of nature, which is consistently shaping and changing our globe. At the Grand Canyon, you can sense the greatness, the transience, and at the same time, the immutability of nature. The river, which was once a modest trickle, has developed an incredible power and constantly created one of the most spectacular landscapes on Earth. Natural wonders like this remind us how small we are and how breathtaking the history of our planet is. Let's go on a journey through time in the canyon. Dinosaurs in the Grand Canyon? When the canyon was already eroded, the most powerful creatures that ever lived on this Earth were long extinct. But in the deep layers of rock exposed by the river, the traces of these giants were immortalized forever. Millions of years later, Alan Krill, a geologist, steps onto a rocky outcrop. He was startled when a massive boulder fell from a high cliff, and then the man was astonished. The rock showed unusual markings. Alan Krill was on a hike with a student in Grand Canyon National Park, on the Bright Angel Trail to be precise, when this rock literally fell at his feet. Tracks that looked like footprints fascinated the natural scientist and geology lecturer. Thrilled by this find, Krill sent photos of the discovery to his colleague Stephen Rowland, a paleontologist at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. Rowland analyzed the photos and came to an astonishing conclusion. The tracks were fossil footprints that were an incredible 313 million years old, making them the oldest and earliest evidence of vertebrates in the Grand Canyon. These footprints on dunes probably belonged to an ammonite, a rather small and very archaic animal that lived in dune landscapes and reproduced via eggs. The fossil footprints probably belonged to two different individuals that walked diagonally across the rock. One of the animals was about 30 centimeters long and moved in a slightly sideways walking pattern. This gait is often found in four-legged vertebrates. The rocks in which the tracks were found came from the Monocacacha Formation, a sandstone layer that is around 314 million years old. When did humans arrive? Humans arrived very late compared to the canyon's ancient history. The first to settle in the area were the Anasazi. Other tribes that lived in or near the canyon or still live here today are the Hohokam, Cohinia, Sinagwawa, Paiute, Navajo, Havasupai, and the Haloapai tribe. Thousands of years ago, the Anasazi dug typical round houses into the ground. They carved out the caves in the canyon and formed plateaus with their houses. The days of these people were filled with building impressive cliff dwellings, creating petroglyphs, some farming and hunting. In the evenings, they gathered around the fire, listened to the stories of the elders, and gazed at the star-studded sky. Not far away, in the vast plains above the canyon, the Hohokam developed an ingenious irrigation system that enabled them to grow corn, pumpkins, and other vegetables in the arid environment. This people became famous for their elaborate pottery and trade with neighboring tribes. The Cahonia, who lived in the western part of the canyon, were also talented potters, and they lived from hunting and gathering food. Like the Anasazi, the Sinagawa built pueblo-like structures in the cliff. They were skilled craftsmen who made elaborate jewelry and tools from the natural resources of the canyon. Much later came the Paiute, who lived as hunter-gatherers in small, scattered groups around the canyon. The Navajo or Dean, still the largest indigenous group in the United States today, brought their own rich culture to the region. Their weaving and silversmithing are artistic and sought-after souvenirs. The people lived most successfully in harmony with the rugged but beautiful landscape of the canyon. They raised sheep and planted corn and beans. The Havasupai and the Halapai, who still live in the Grand Canyon today, are custodians of ancient stories, traditions, and cultures. In picturesque Havasu Canyon, these people preserve the beauty of Havasu Falls. The Havalupai, who live in the western part of the canyon, are proud keepers of their culture and history and welcome visitors to the spectacular Grand Canyon Skywalk. All of these people left traces in the canyon, and all of these people revered the place as a seat of the gods. Some parts of the canyon are still protected sanctuaries today. Tribal elders and shamans guard these places to this day, and visitors are only allowed to enter if accompanied by an indigenous guide. Treasure in a bunker? During the Cuban Missile Crisis in the early 1960s, the United States government built a potential emergency shelter for the U.S. government in a cave in the Grand Canyon. The cave, located about 60 meters below the Earth's surface, was equipped with modest luxuries, supplies, and fully functional emergency equipment to serve as a refuge in the event of a nuclear attack. Luckily, the crisis went off without a hitch, and the bunker was never used for its original purpose. In 2010, the cave was converted into a unique luxury suite. The suite is fully equipped with modern amenities and offers a secluded, tranquil environment that is completely isolated from the outside world. Surrounded by natural cave walls that are over 65 million years old, couples who want peace and quiet, people who love the unusual, or simply fans of the magnificent landscapes of the Grand Canyon can spend their vacation here. For the operators, the former bunker has become a real gold mine. The luxury suite is extremely popular and is booked out months in advance. The Colorado is disappearing. The canyon is a symbol of change in this world. It has been created by enormous changes, and time does not stand still here either. Experts fear that the Colorado River will dry up, and with it, the loss of a lifeline for millions of people. The river feeds countless ecosystems in the region, and the loss of the river's water could plunge an entire region into unprecedented crisis. The combination of overuse and the effects of climate change has already led to a drastic reduction in the volume of water in the river, and the trend continues. The Colorado River not only supplies water to cities and rural communities, but is also an essential resource for agriculture in the region. If the river were to dry up, it would have catastrophic consequences for the food supply and the entire economy. Farmers who rely on the Colorado's water would face severe crop failures. Food prices could skyrocket, and local indigenous people would be at risk. For the many tribes that have lived here for thousands of years, the loss of the river would not only mean the loss of valuable water and food, but also the loss of a sacred place that is deeply rooted in their culture and history. The canyon as such would of course remain without the river, but the landscape would not be the same without the rushing waters of the Colorado. The Colorado River and its tributaries provide habitats for a multitude of animal and plant species. A decrease in water volume would also mean that these ecosystems would be severely altered or disappear. Uranium, an environmental disaster in the canyon. Uranium is a naturally occurring radioactive element, and large quantities of it have been found in the Grand Canyon. The heavy metal is the basis of our nuclear energy. When uranium was discovered in the Grand Canyon, the discovery triggered a boom. However, the substance that provides us with energy not only has an economic advantage, uranium also poses a huge ecological and health risk. The large uranium deposits in the Grand Canyon are embedded in primeval layers of rock that have formed over millions of years. In the 1950s, when the demand for uranium for nuclear energy and weapons production was at its highest, mining began in this region. The mining was mainly done by conventional mining, where the uranium ore is extracted from the ground and then chemically processed. The consequences of uranium mining were and are enormous. This dark side of the region is hardly noticed by holidaymakers standing in front of the imposing landscape. Uranium mines have released radioactive particles and heavy metals regionally, and the radioactive substances have leaked into the groundwater and river systems. The consequences were pollution of water resources and probably also long-term contamination of the environment. The indigenous peoples living near the Grand Canyon are particularly affected by the negative impacts of uranium mining. Many communities suffer from the health consequences of the damage. Currently, uranium mining in the Grand Canyon National Park and neighboring areas is a hotly debated topic. In recent years, there have been efforts to restrict or ban uranium mining in the region in order to protect the environment and the health of local communities. The U.S. government has at times already imposed bans on new uranium mining near the Grand Canyon. Conservationists are enforcing a study, and new mines may not be developed until it is clear what impact the mining will have on the environment and public health.